Hey guys, we've got an exciting guest on today. She is a client of Switch. We've known her for so long. She's gone through a really exciting journey down the medical industry. She's just graduated. So anything that we do talk about today, I want to let you guys know this is purely our opinion and this is not medical advice. We're going to go through some really cool topics today that we think everyone should learn and know about and start the conversation in our country, in Australia, that is very important for our health. But please note that this is just purely our opinion.
Let's go rogue.
Let's go.
Welcome to another episode of the Rogue Treatment Podcast. James, welcome back.
Welcome, guys.
We've got a great guest today.
We do.
Someone we know well, eh?
Yeah, we obviously know her as a client of Switch.
Yeah.
But
We've both treated her.
we've both treated her.
Yeah. And she's been on a journey while we've been treating her. Most of the issues that we've been treating is because of the journey that she's been on, right?
Yeah, but I guess the exciting thing about what we're going to go talk about today is, you know, part of her journey and what she's learned, what she's experienced in the industry that she's in. And, you know, it's going to really shine a light on maybe the health industry in Australia. You know, one of our things that we obviously talk about a lot is health. And, you know, I think especially in the last couple of months, there's massive talk about health, you know, obviously with what's happened in America and the whole Make America Healthy Again or whatever it is.
Something like that.
But like the good thing is that we've been talking to her about how bad the system is in Australia and how, you know, literally all the things that have been coming out in the media recently in America is probably happening here as well.
That's right.
So, you know, I think it should be awesome to talk about her experiences and what she knows about this as well.
That's right. Well, she comes fresh from the medical world. We welcome Danielle Nicolaides. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey.
Thanks for having me.
You ready?
Yes.
Very good. Well, I guess I want to open the podcast with a question about, you know, a little bit about what you like to talk about, right? So why should people listen to your message? What do you know that is, you know, important for, I guess, anyone who's listening to this to know about their health? And why is this something that they need, we as a country need to be talking about now as well?
So from a health perspective,
general.
So from many of our conversations, I feel like a broken record sometimes because I always circle back to the same story or the same message, which is to look at what you eat, and thinking about where does our food come from, what processes is that food or the materials going through before it gets to your plate, and to think about what are we ingesting that we don't know we're ingesting, or what are we ingesting that we could be eating more of, but we're just not getting that intake. So I guess I just sort of, you know, over my journey started to really look at what I was eating, where it was coming from, what quality of food I was eating, because my diet never used to be very, I grew up with the Mediterranean diet, so I always thought that I ate healthy, but then I looked at some of the things I used to eat and I was like, oh, wait a sec, that's not good for me. And I think there's a lot to say about where our food comes from and what's in it. And that, we'll probably get to the details later, but it's always interesting looking at where our food comes from. I
think like you kind of touched on the whole concept of Mediterranean diet. I remember when I was at uni, it was like there was a lot of research going into the Mediterranean diet.
There's a lot of research
Delicious,
behind it.
by the way.
It is.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I assume you had the same thing growing up. You'd be like crying at the dinner table, I don't want this again. Yeah. And then I was like, why can't I have McDonald's? Like my friend at primary school was having McDonald's once a week. I used to be so jealous. I'd only get it once a year. and then I remember my mum being like, oh, because we like the average family growing up couldn't afford to go eat out every week. And McDonald's was a special treat, but it was never something we grew up with.
Yeah, 100%.
And we always grew up with like olive oil, maybe ghee and butter. But we we never grew up with like vegetable oils and all of that. Like, and even with, you know, certain meats, like meat wasn't something that we ate every day. And so it's just, we ate a lot of fish. But yeah, when you look at the diet that you grew up with, or the diet that your grandparents grew up with, and the quality of food that they had then, like how tomatoes tasted different, how cucumbers tasted different. Now it's like what we're eating. It's not. It's harder to follow a Mediterranean diet today than it ever was.
And I think that's the key part there, right? Is you could have tomatoes, you can have cucumbers, you can have veggies. You know, like I remember eating lots of cooked tomatoes, lots of cooked eggplants and things like that. But like you said at the start, you can still have those fruit and veggies now, but are we getting the nutrient dense qualities that the Mediterranean diet is supposed to be having, especially now that you see a lot of medical professionals, you see it all over the news, Mediterranean diet, they're pushing the shit out of it, right? But if you're cooking in vegetable oils, if you're grabbing, correct,
defeats the purpose. Or even some of the foods where if you're having processed meats with the Mediterranean diet, I'm sorry, but like
it doesn't work.
It doesn't. Like you shouldn't be. I mean, there's probably a version of processed meats where we think about what do we mean when we're calling processed meats. We're talking like salamis and sausages, because there is a lot of Mediterranean diets that have some form of cured meat or a sausage, but the way that they prepared that is not the same way that it's prepared in these industrial. It's different.
But Dani, like, why is this information not out there? Like, because we're talking about this now for a lot of our viewers. They're going to be thinking, "What? I've never heard this before. Like, this is not on the news. Like, why?" Yeah, I know we're going to dive into your journey now in terms of like your sort of background, but where did this come from in terms of you looking further? And why is this not out there?
So, I feel like there's probably two questions in there. So, in terms of why as a country, why do we not think about food? I think we do care about food compared to some other countries. Like I think Australia has a good engagement with has a better engagement with farming and our kind of rural agriculture, because we've been through so much in the last few years where we've had all these stories on the news about the farmers and the cherries and the strawberries and everything, that we are aware where our beef comes from and where our fruit and vegetables come from in like broad sense. In the broad sense. So we know our mangoes come from far north Queensland. Like, well, if that's the best we can do, then we should be doing a bit better. Or
I mean more in, yes, we maybe know where it's coming from, but we know what they're doing to it.
Yes,
like,
that's the question, because what?
So like they've been pumping their meat with like a certain antibiotic or something like that.
Yeah, of course. It doesn't surprise me. There was I can't remember. There was
Sweet, beef me up.
No,
I'm joking.
Like, okay.
Just trying to get a rise out of it. No, but
thanks, H.
But why is this new information to people?
I think it's new because I don't know if it's something that's post-COVID or it's coinciding in the last 10 years. Like, we're more concerned about what goes in our body, and that has extended to food.
Yeah.
And it's across many aspects of medicine. Whether it be certain medications, vaccines, whatever. There's just now, like, where is this hesitancy coming from? Some of it is rational, some of it is totally irrational. But we're asking these questions of where is it coming from? And I think that's extending to the food space. But I also, like, I will go into, like, I also think there's an area of health providers in the community that are becoming more and more prominent, that are pushing these narratives, exactly, around like what we're eating, look at the back of the ingredients. And I think that's confusing a lot of people. It's making them question, are these raw ingredients good for me, or are they harming me? And it's hard to tell what is good in tiny doses, like what's acceptable, what's going to be harmless in tiny doses, and what is not acceptable even in that average dietary intake.
I want to push back on that a little bit, because I agree with you. Yes, there's maybe more light on it than it was
more
in the
light,
past.
yeah.
But when I talk to people about, oh, do you understand what you're eating? Like, or like, I'll make a comment of, seed oils are bad for you. Like, I make this joke, like,
Loves a comment like that.
but like, I'll say things
straight
like,
on the
or even
table.
like,
People think you're a nut
not that
job.
I believe this, and I'll eat lettuce, for instance, but there is information out there that there is toxic chemicals in things like lettuce and things like that that could, like you said, in small doses could potentially harm us. So like every time someone says, "Do you want a salad?" I'm like, "No, it's trying to kill you," and and then everyone laughs and everyone dismisses that, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like we don't know enough.
Yeah.
And like so yes, there's maybe a light on it, but I don't think that there's enough understanding or enough people talking about how there's this stuff that is literally killing us. Like, incidents of cancers have gone up, incidents of body toxicity in
but there are many
postmortem has gone
reasons
up.
why, like our ability to detect cancers is getting better and better.
Agreed.
And it's
of
getting
course.
earlier, so we're catching things earlier than what they would typically be detected.
No, I mean mortality rates. Not
mortality
detection.
rates.
Yeah.
But then again, there's probably still better detection.
Absolutely, there is better detection. We're detecting it earlier. But what I'm trying to say is,
why are people getting sicker? Seemingly,
Yeah.
why are there all these endocrine problems? Why
Correct.
are all of these so many metabolic problems today than you kind of wonder than there ever were? Why are so many people overweight? Australia has a huge obesity problem.
Yeah, correct.
Even not just an obesity, but an overweight and obesity problem, because they occupy different scales. And it kind of makes you think, like, why are we seeing this now and say not 50 years ago? What is different about our society? Because we're way more advanced medically, where we have way more knowledge about food, we have way more knowledge about medicine. Why are we sicker now than we were 50 years ago?
And you talk about like the overweight, obesity problem in Australia, but and I guess back, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, no one would know what a calorie was, but now everyone knows what a calorie was, and everyone looks at the back, like you were saying. I guess there are people that are, I guess challenging that narrative that like everything's fruit and veg is all good for you. Maybe that's just bringing it to light. Is that sort of why? Or do you see like this? There's going to be a transition in terms of like our understanding of what we're actually putting in our body, because we're sort of learning more, and the layperson's learning more as well.
I think we are learning more about diet, but then we're also like, I don't know. I feel really torn on this one, because it's like we're learning more, but we're also gaining more weight. But people are living longer.
People are living longer, I agree, but they're saying, well, yeah, but the onset of Alzheimer's is earlier in some people. Like, people are now getting it in their 60s.
Well, it depends are you talking about Alzheimer's or general dementia?
General dementia, but I'm narrowing in on Alzheimer's as well, because obviously that's, obviously an impact in the brain that's a little bit different to other forms of dementia, right? So other forms of dementia can be because of old age and all that, but Alzheimer's is happening earlier as a diagnosis, potentially. Maybe
it's hard to make an Alzheimer's diagnosis, because it's like a histological diagnosis.
Correct.
Which means that they have to sample the cerebral spinal fluid, or it's
Really?
it's because it's
hell?
about the beta amyloid levels. It's even the beta amyloid ratios in the brain that seeps into it's basically the debris that isn't typically cleared then seeps into the cerebral spinal fluid, which if you sample, if you're concerned that someone's got Alzheimer's, you can also do a bunch of neuroimaging, which gives you evidence anyway, because taking cerebral spinal fluid is really invasive, so we don't do that unless you absolutely have to. But you wouldn't typically do that routinely just to check that someone has Alzheimer's when they clearly or clinically clearly have dementia, because you're just harming the patient when you know that they have Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is like clinically, and it presents, we know that there are certain traits within that presentation that correspond to what we know about the presentation of Alzheimer's. So you can say, oh, this person's presenting and it looks very similar to the presentation, behavior, memory, pattern loss to textbook Alzheimer's, but we don't say, therefore, this patient has Alzheimer's. We say, therefore, the patient probably has Alzheimer's. Like we say it's a probable diagnosis. And then if we do get evidence, say, of brain slices at autopsy and the histological evidence that says, yes, they've got these beta amyloid and the neurofibrillary tangles and stuff, like all this very in the minutiae of neuroscience, they pick it out and they go, oh yes, this person definitely has a histological diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Then we say Alzheimer's. But in the moment, you think about the experience, because we've all seen someone with dementia in our families, like that clinical presentation, it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is unless it's going to change management. And with Alzheimer's, we know the direction. You can't reverse the damage.
Correct.
You can prolong the deterioration, but we don't have like that miracle drug yet. So all we do is go, what's going to change management? What's going to change quality of life? And then base our approach off that, rather than, I think this is a huge important point in medicine, is that what are we doing to improve the quality of life, or are we doing it for the sake of more tests and more invasive studies? Like, who's that for? Is it for research? Otherwise, what's the outcome of this if it's not changing management? It's just waste.
But at that point, it's symptomatic, right? So like, if we go back to the whole process of, how do we prevent these things from happening? And once you've got that diagnosis of dementia, right, whether it's Alzheimer's or any other form of dementia, like you said, we can only really slow the process down. We can't cure it or change it. We don't know how to right now.
You often hear about like the early onset, or they could be
the early onset's an interesting part, but early onset's not the average presentation. That's seen as like an outlier. So I think early onset is like people with Down syndrome have early onset.
Right.
So basically, people with very early onset Alzheimer's, and these typically stand out in the population, they might develop it, say, in their 50s.
Yeah.
And that's very early, because typically Alzheimer's comes on a couple decades later. But those patients will usually have some genetic component to it, or something else going on.
Yeah, but do you think that there is a component of dementia that's not genetic, that is lifestyle factor?
Yeah, for sure. There have been studies on that. There's, in terms of looking at dementia overall and the different types of the dementia, we know that there's vascular dementia, and that is almost, I think there was a study several years ago that, and there was a couple studies that validated that said that about 30% of dementia is attributed to cardiovascular risk factors. It's particularly things like hypertension, cardiovascular disease, stroke, people who have a history of, like, say, midlife hypertension, they have higher, like, as in a higher risk of developing vascular, say, neurovascular complications afterwards.
So I always come back to, because you said it earlier, right? If we now know that there's huge lifestyle factors that are contributed to a majority of, diseases that we're now seeing more of. Obesity is one. Obesity is the easy one to pick, right?
So bad,
but there's so many things that we're seeing increased incidence of, and earlier incidence of it in like the general population, right?
Yeah.
Like people in their 60s are now getting signs of dementia, when before, if we just put it down to it being like a vascular thing, it would normally happen later, right? Maybe in the 70s, maybe in the 80s.
It depends the type of dementia.
Absolutely. I'm just speaking generally here, right? We're seeing increases in the incidence and an increase in incidental age, right? We're using dementia as one, but there's so many other things. And then you said earlier, but why wasn't this happening 50 years ago, let's say? Why wasn't this happening 20 to 30 years ago? There's a stark difference in what we were doing back then to what we're doing now. Food is much more readily accessible. The types of foods that we're ingesting is very different. And no one's been able to make that link yet. There is studies that are out there, but no one wants to really listen to them. No one really wants to, I guess, dive into it deeper. Yeah. But what's your experience on that? Because like, it's easy, it's easy to sit here and say, we can test it better. Of course we can. Maybe there's other factors that can contribute to it. But every disease you can look at, somewhere along the line, we can bring it back to lifestyle risk factors. And lifestyle risk factors aren't just, do you exercise? Because I know plenty of people that exercise heaps that still get dementia. I know plenty of people that still get type 2 diabetes, that still run, 2-3 times a week, and they have type 2 diabetes.
Yeah. We know that physical activity is just a fraction of what it means to be healthy. Like, physical activity is super important, and you guys would be the first to say that. But diet's huge. There's you see someone who's morbidly obese can exercise all they want, but they're really going to struggle losing weight unless they change their diet.
Correct. And
sorry, are you alluding to the fact then we actually comes down to what we're actually putting in our mouths, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Not just like, those old diets, and we were talking now before the pod about GPs often send patients to a nutritionist, and then the nutritionist
or
a dietitian, and then
because
hand out
dietitians,
pamphlet.
well, the thing is, dietitians are they are covered by Medicare, whereas nutritionists aren't.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Interesting.
Medicare will, yeah.
I don't know the difference,
So well,
It's
there's a slight difference. It's like
That's why I said it.
Dietitians is about food, and it's biochemically about food, the quantities, the types of food. They're looking at deficiencies, optimization. No,
I'm joking.
it's very food based. Right? It's very science. And it's affiliated with Medicare. You'll find dietitians in hospitals and stuff. Whereas nutritionists are more holistic. It's a bit more.
Right.
I don't compliment. I'm not a nutritionist. I don't know the difference as well.
No, I didn't know there was a difference. So maybe is that bringing in naturopathy and things like that in a nutritionist?
Not all nutritionists are naturopaths, and not all naturopaths are nutritionists. I think they're different qualifications, but I'm not too sure. But typically nutritionists will do a lot of naturopathy, and they're aware of each other's spaces.
They're that way inclined.
But at the end of the day, though, whether you're a dietitian or nutritionist, right? In our current medical system, especially if you're a dietitian, right, you would need to use evidence-based practice.
100%.
But the evidence that they're using, no matter how old or how recent it is not helping people. It just is what it is, because otherwise we wouldn't have this issue.
I think that's probably a bit too extreme. I think it is helping.
Just get her revved up.
I have to
start your engines.
No, so okay. There is dietitians have to occupy a space in the hospital. They have to. It's just part of our health. Yes,
and it's
exactly.
a waste of space.
I said start your engines. No.
What do you mean?
I don't think that physios need to be in the hospital setting.
Well, what about for rehab and stuff? Because we have rehab hospitals that
an exercise physiologist can do that.
Yeah, but physios we love the physios on the
I know. I know, because
they help
the physios
they help us discharge patients.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, they're super important, especially if you have patients that have injuries or you're trying to mobilize them, or they got respiratory.
I think James is saying that it doesn't have to be a physio that does that.
Yeah. Sorry,
that important role.
Correct. Yeah. It's an important role in what they do. I'm not discounting that. I just don't think it needs to be done by a physio.
We would love more physios just in private practice.
Oh, okay.
No, but that's not why I'm saying it.
That's why I'm saying it, though. But with different people.
I'm not saying it for that reason, because we need more physio in private practice. I'm saying
it's
it because
completely different physio.
The type of role that a physiotherapist does in a hospital, take out the necessity of it. I'm not saying it's not necessary.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely is. The patient needs that role to be done.
Yeah.
I just think for the amount of study that physiotherapists do, and then what they are capable of doing, it's very limited in a hospital. That doesn't need to be done by a physiotherapist, and an EP can do exactly the same thing.
There's a lot of clinical reasoning and all that sort of stuff that they draw on from uni, but at the end of the day, their actual practice in a hospital is quite limited, right? Yeah.
So when you
that's
when you do your prac for physio, don't you have to do hospital?
Oh, it's
Absolutely.
predominantly
Okay.
hospital.
It's predominantly hospital. The whole system is geared up to hospital.
Yeah.
We would
So-
do out of 6 pracs that they do now, 5 of them would be in a hospital.
What?
So there's
I'm
not
Dani.
really incentive from the learning pathway to go into private practice?
I couldn't give a shit about that. I don't think private practice physios should do uni either. I think they should be apprentices. So I'm not
Danny,
saying it
we've
from that
spoken
point of
about
view.
this.
I don't
Yeah.
remember.
No, I'm not saying it from that point of view. What I'm
Yeah.
trying to say is, right, that the current system's outdated.
Yeah, right.
The,
Okay.
the evidence, the evidence-based practice that they're currently using is outdated. Right? Yes, there might be newer stuff coming in, and I'm not talking about doctors here because obviously doctors are different. But from the allied health space, when we're talking about dietitians, we're talking about physios.
Yeah.
Like physios, still, I guarantee you, if I walked into a physio and went into a neuro ward in the hospital, that is,
Yeah.
went into a neuro ward, went into the rehab ward, they're probably still doing the rehab
Same.
practices that I did
Yes.
13, 14 years ago
Yes.
when I did my prac.
Yes.
And
Oh,
that's
right.
not how evidence works.
Yes. And now working with EPs, we know that they can do that, if not better. Like, why are we? Danny,
Yeah,
you've been in
yeah.
hospitals
Yeah.
recently a lot, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
EPs actually learn.
What-
I did both, and EPs learn the pathology of probably what's happening in hospital way better than physios do. Maybe I missed that.
Why
or maybe
is
I was
that?
asleep.
Why is that? I don't I wouldn't know why. Like,
Because EPs are trying to find a niche in the system that's between PTs and between physio, and the best way to do that is to be super knowledgeable on pathology.
right. Okay.
Whereas physios are super knowledgeable on rehab protocols and mechanism of injury. It's very different.
The main difference between the two is that once EPs can't diagnose,
Okay.
physios can. But in a hospital setting, that's not really like beneficial anyway, really.
No, I
Because the
never
diagnosis
diagnosed
comes
anything
from
in the
you guys,
hospital.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that they're exercise-based methods as opposed to like hands-on or everything else, but right? So if the exercise physiologist is like specialized in exercise and doesn't have to diagnose, isn't that the perfect person to have and has the same understanding of
Are there
pathology?
as,
Isn't
are
that
there
the
as
same-
many exercise physiologists as there are physios?
Pretty
going
much
through
every uni that has physio at the moment has a sports and exercise degree. It's a different pathway to become an exercise physiologist.
So what do you think makes people go into exercise physiology as
They
opposed
didn't
to
get into
physio?
physio.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. One of the reasons.
Probably,
Probably-
I'm just
probably-
being harsh.
No,
maybe,
it's
but-
yeah. Not to say they're better or worse. That's another issue, but it's a stupid high ATAR that sort of.
But is it
pushes
the
people left and
ATAR
right.
or is it the fact that there aren't as many schools like programs?
That's the other part. Yeah.
for EP.
No,
Yeah.
for
For
physio.
physio.
For physio.
Oh,
heaps
physios
now.
everywhere.
When
Maybe
I
not so much for
graduated, there was
EP.
one.
Pardon?
When I
Of like
graduated,
training
there was
programs.
Yeah.
One physio program.
When
why
I
is the
when I
ATAR so
graduated
high?
too, and now there's
I
everywhere.
don't know. Yeah, I honestly don't know.
It's because it's high demand.
high demand.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if it was high demand, wouldn't they? Oh, you mean like lots of students want to go
Want to
into
go
physio?
into physio, yeah.
It's the only reason.
But
why
then
the
you're
then-
like
high,
crying
right?
out for more physios.
But then at the end of their like physio
Yeah.
degree, they go and do medicine.
yeah, I know there's
or
so
they drop
many
out.
physios.
So
Or they
just
drop
like I
out. What's the
said, or they
dropout
drop
rate?
out,
I think
yeah.
that when I was doing it, it
Yeah.
was really high.
So just like I said,
Really, really
that EPs do EP because they couldn't get into physio. A lot of the physios are doing physio because they couldn't get into medicine. So
Yeah,
so like
exactly.
it's the same. It's the same
Yeah.
Speaking of medicine,
thing. We went on a tangent there.
was
I was
good.
going
Danny's throwing
to
mud
just
back.
link that anyway because this whole idea that it's like our system's crying out for more physios, yet we're bottlenecked by universities and high student demand for these courses and limited supply, limited training positions in hospitals, and that translate to like not enough physios going through the pipeline, and then not enough going into private practice, and they're like caught up in hospitals and they get burnt out and don't want to do like it's the same for medicine. Like you've got
yeah, right.
Oh, right.
Australia
okay.
crying out for doctors, like all over rural Australia. Like it's a huge problem. Like we're still not where we need to be in terms of distribution of doctors where they're needed, particularly like community-based doctors, general practice, even certain
Even
specialties.
general practice.
Yeah, we're still like in crisis areas where there's not enough GPs.
Because of where they're situated. Because
Yeah, it's like mostly
Sydney,
remote.
There's 10
like,
GPs.
Yeah, well, see, even in metropolitan areas, we've still got like there are some GPs that have closed their books because they've got so many patients. It's the same with physio. Like,
to be fair, my GP has
closed their books. Yeah, same with mine.
In fact, I went back. Get this.
They were retiring or something.
No, well, they cut. I mean, they can cut down hours, but it's still like they're at maximum capacity.
Their retention's really good, James.
Yeah,
they see anyone over 60 every 6 weeks.
No, but like
Dani,
the
I'm
issue.
just throwing mud. It's all right.
Yeah.
Let's go into.
But
Let's go.
I'm sorry. I just realised you two were having a go at each other. And I was just like,
it's a very similar. Like, you kind of wonder, like, what is driving this issue with supply and demand? Because we've got the national demand for it, and we've got the supply, like, waiting to get into these degrees, but there's something in the middle between getting in, going to university.
Oh, those cash cow universities.
No. Actually, we have a fantastic university. Like we've got. I'm
just getting you up. It's okay.
It's all right. Like the Australian medical schools, like there's only like I think around 8 postgrad programs and a few more undergrad. Like we don't have that many medical schools compared to other countries. Like the States has so many that you kind of wonder how many of them, you wonder, like, does the standard change across different medical schools where, because Australia is so regulated, most of our medical schools are still pretty good.
Okay.
Like we don't have a bad medical school because the training is just really high quality. And there are so many rules around our national curriculums and what, like the standards of what medical students need to be taught before they go in, and then the standards on placement, and like it's just there's so many checks and balances that it really gave me a lot of comfort going like it doesn't really matter what school I get into, my education is going to be fantastic. But the places are very limited
to get in.
I think there's something like, and the numbers might have changed since I applied, but there is something like 5,000 to 6,000 applicants and like 1,500 positions across the country.
All 8 schools,
including I don't know if that's including undergrad.
Okay,
yeah,
but is in like the amount of people applying is so large compared to the amount of people that get in, and that's just it's a supply and demand because they've only got a certain amount of positions, which then translates to a certain amount of training positions and like student places that these hospitals are willing to take, which then translates to the amount of junior medical officer positions that these hospitals are willing to offer. So across the entire pipeline, there's something in there that's creating that bottleneck, whether that whole thing is the bottleneck or if there are other reasons why. But basically,
what's creating the demand for an increased need of health?
Well, I think like that's an interesting question. I don't know whether that's we getting like more people going into specialties rather than into general practice. So like the interest is changing, but I don't know.
But what about like just in general, like our need for doctors has
because our population's increasing as well.
Yeah, but by how much?
Well, what are we now? Like 26 million? Or 20? I don't know. What's the population of Australia?
I think it's like almost 27. But like for as long as I can remember, it's been sitting between 25 to 27. Like, yes, our population's clearly growing.
Yeah, but the amount of medical schools hasn't changed. Like, we might have had 1 or 2 new medical schools.
Yeah, but we also get a lot of people come from overseas. Like doctors.
Yeah, 27.5 million.
20. Okay, so
that's
has
a
increased.
Lot. Yeah, it has increased.
A lot. But at the same time, like medicine's on a particular visa too, right? Like if you're a doctor and you pass registrations exams here, like you can come from pretty much any country, I thought. Like there's a lot of overseas doctors that come here, right?
Yeah, but they have rules placed on where they can practice and stuff. Are there restrictions
on them?
Yeah, I think if you're like I don't know how accurate this information is, but
disclaimer.
If you're coming from
Disclaimer.
Sorry,
I'm just telling the audience.
I don't got me. What was I saying?
Sorry.
You're gonna have to edit this out.
No, it's staying.
He always leaves it in.
So you were talking about overseas,
Oh
international.
yeah. So there are rules around
doctors
like
coming
where
here.
like so I think if you're coming in, there's certain pathways. You have to work 10 years in a rural place before you can practice anywhere. Otherwise, and there are issues with like Medicare. Like if you
so a lot of doctors don't want to come here then from overseas.
Well, if you want to bill Medicare, like to be able to get the Medicare a bulk bill, if you want to bulk bill your patients, then I think you have to do the 10 years rule. But that's certain pathways. That's not all I think that's for general practice.
Okay.
But there are, I think we make international doctors jump through hoops to get here. Which like we have to protect
keep a high standard.
Yeah, and you got to protect the domestic population of doctors because otherwise they're going to be competing. But it kind of makes you question like what's the goal? Is it working? Who's checking this data to make sure that we're achieving those goals rather than just having these blanket rules and then waiting 15 years and go, oh, is this working?
Yeah.
Because 10 years is a long time to ask for someone to go rural.
But like, especially if they could probably study again here, and it won't take that long.
Yeah, I think it depends what country you come from.
Okay.
Like certain programs translate, but then others I'm not sure.
So we're clearly in a health crisis.
Well, it depends on the area, right?
Well,
you go out to Mudgee, you really need doctors there.
Okay.
But
Mudgee's not that far from here.
It's about 5 hours.
Yeah, that's not that bad.
Is that where you're going to go, Dani?
No, I've got family in Mudgee, but...
There you go.
No, I don't.
Don't leave.
No, I think my family's here. And like this is the problem, right? So they need doctors in these areas, but it's hard to get it's hard to get the interest out because by the time you finish med school, by the time you do your internship and your residency and you're interested in the program, you get on the program and now finally you want to move, it's like you've already set out roots. Like you've already set up roots. It's really hard to uproot your life and go. Yeah. And there's just such an incentive to go locum instead because it's more money. So yeah, it's like finding a balance unless you genuinely like really want to live rurally. It can be hard to pull permanent doctors.
Again, this comes back to like having a look at our overall system, right? And I argue this point in the physio side of things, but like it doesn't stop you. Like when you're doing your residency, when you're doing, all of those aspects, even some of the study, like I get that some of it needs to be in a lab face to face, all right? But couldn't you do some of that? Like, couldn't you incentivize people that got into the medicine from the start, right? And say, hey, you get maybe some bonus by, instead of putting your roots here in Sydney and learning in this school, if you go rural from here, maybe you're getting paid to learn at this point in time. Maybe like they're not stuck here.
Yeah, but there's something similar in place now where like most universities will have rural programs where in the clinical years where students will go to rural areas and live there, and it's an extremely subsidized like rates. Like housing will be accommodated for, like they'll have university housing, or they'll provide like discounts for like I don't know, like subsidies or if you had a family that you need to move and rent somewhere new. So they do help students. They try and make it as easy as possible for students to go and study part of their degree rurally.
But by that stage it's too late.
Well, it depends. It depends. There are some schools that will take the students out much earlier.
Yeah.
Whereas other schools, it might be like a rotation, like a 4 or 5 week rotation in a rural town, which
you hate doing.
Well, you don't hate it. But it feels so temporary. It doesn't feel like you're here long enough to be part of a team or be part of
down the weeks.
Well, depends what time you're in. I did my rural rotation in the middle of Easter and Greek Easter, and I was like,
yeah, so that's what I mean. So you don't want to be there, and that's not going to.
I mean, I wanted to. I don't know. It was hard. Like I
just say it.
I didn't.
You wanted to be at home.
Look, I enjoyed it, but I felt like it was a bad timing.
I remember how tight your neck was at that point.
Of course, you enjoy it. Like I don't remember a placement that I didn't enjoy either. Yeah. Like, it may not have been the.
You right?
It's not that I didn't enjoy it.
Oh.
I didn't want to do it.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
it's not that when I was there, it's not like I
Yeah.
didn't enjoy it.
No, okay.
You kind of find something in that placement to get a bit of joy from.
Yeah, exactly.
You make it work.
100%. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're then going to move rural just because you did 4
No,
or 5
no.
weeks there.
I felt that when I was doing my rural placement, I was like, I get why people would move out here. Like the lifestyle is so
especially
it's
Mudgee.
so
Mudgee's
beautiful.
nice.
My
Yeah.
family's in Mudgee, but I did my placement in Griffith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit further
maybe
out.
not so
That
much.
was why it was hard to come back to do the
Yeah.
the transit because
Yeah, of
It's
course.
just in
far.
the middle of
Yeah.
it's too far. But I enjoyed it. It's really hard because it's only 4 weeks, so it's just not enough time.
Yeah.
Like if it was 6 weeks, you could go, okay, I get a real sense for this place.
You're like
4
counting down
weeks-
from day dot.
4 weeks is like the first week flies, and
Yeah.
then you got 3 weeks. You're trying to get everything signed off. But yeah, it was like just not enough time. But I mean, I got enough to go. This is a beautiful place. I don't know if I would live here permanently.
Yeah.
It's like a place that you would go like for 6 months. I could even do a year, but I don't think I could move my life there.
Yeah.
Danny,
We know.
let's dive further into your journey. So,
Okay.
when did med school first start for you? How long ago was this now? Just to give our viewers an idea of the process,
Where did
the
med
journey
school
you've been
start?
on.
Well, in high school, in uni, I never had any inclination to be a doctor.
Right.
No interest. I felt like didn't have the guts for it. I was like, oh, I don't know if I could deal with all that
I mean,
blood.
same
Like
as-
it was,
yeah.
you know how some people are like, oh no, I'm too much of a wuss. Like I can't.
The stories you've told me, are you joking? I'm glad you've
no,
got
I
the
know,
guts
I
for
know,
it
I know.
now.
Don't worry, my stomach is hard. And
Oh
all
my
that.
god.
But like I always thought like, oh, I can't. Ew. Like I
Yeah.
always sort of was like, no, it's not for me. Also, I was like, I don't think I got the brains or the passion. Like I definitely didn't have the passion. But it's interesting because sometimes those perspectives, I always sort of steered clear from medicine, and I felt like it was medicine that called me rather than me chasing medicine. Because I genuinely did not search for it. I genuinely think
that.
it found me. So I didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished high school.
Yeah.
I was so like, I don't know what to do. My careers advisor said, please don't go to uni, go to TAFE.
What career advisor did you have?
I had a
Jeez,
terrible career
really didn't like
advisor.
ya.
She was
I would
like,
have preferred that one.
so I didn't like, honestly, my careers advisor said to me, and I'll never forget because I almost tried really hard on my ATAR just to prove it wrong.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, what? No, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah. Why not?
But I was
Wow,
just
you
like
proved her
annoyed.
wrong
I was just
now.
annoyed. I was like, you don't know
Can I
me.
just ask a question before you go into your story? When you talk about careers advisors,
Oh, like
Oh
a career
my
counselor.
god.
It's
We've
like
got to get one of these guys on.
yeah.
You look down that camera, Danny, you tell them, I'm a doctor now. Well,
Not
just
not
finished.
quite
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, yeah.
to talk to this careers
Almost.
advisor.
Oh, probably when I was 18. No, I was 17 because they sit people down.
It was like one conversation.
Yeah, it was one she didn't know
And
me.
you remember it to
she didn't
the
know
day.
me.
I remember
You
having
proved
a
her wrong.
conversation
No,
with
you
my
know why? Because I was chatty in high school and I used to talk all the time.
Are
I
you
mean,
chatty?
not much has changed.
That's why you're here.
No, I know. But because I was so chatty, I would distract people in the class.
Yep.
I wouldn't listen when the teacher was talking. I was off in my own world.
Yep.
I
Me and you
would
both.
sometimes I would never forget in my biology class. I loved biology, but there were times where I would just
That was
pick
a
up my
sign.
books and leave halfway through the lesson, and the teacher would be like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to the library because I can study better in the library than here.
Oh my
so
God.
I would leave the classroom and go to the library,
Yeah.
Go look
do
up
my
seed
work, because
oils.
I was like 2 weeks ahead of some people, like 2 weeks ahead of the class in terms of the dot points.
Yeah.
And I'd come back and I was like, sorry for leaving the class. It was very noisy. And then,
Oh my god.
like, but I was most of the time I was the one that was making the, like I was
So you were the
talking all the
distraction.
time.
Yeah.
Not always, but sometimes I had a lot of teachers tell me off for talking all the time, and I was a bit chatty.
I don't see the problem with
So-
that, but I just don't understand
Wait.
these.
So
I remember
there-
careers
Oh.
like
Yeah.
at our schools. He sat me down. What do you want to do for?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't even after school. It was like you got to go do your year 10 work placement. Where are you going? I don't know.
We didn't even
Here, I'll go there.
have year 10
I
work
went to-
placement.
Told me to fill out my ATO paper, and then that was it. Didn't talk about what was happening after school.
I went to Nick's Bar and Grill. They sent me there to go in the kitchen. I think I cut my finger and that was it.
I don't remember my careers advisor telling me anything other than that.
I don't think. Well, no, we didn't. My careers advisor didn't even know me, but I don't know what they do. Maybe they read. Like I was chatty and often distracted. I mean, I had good grades, but I was just distracted all the time, and I don't know whether. She just kind of judged it based on that. Like, I don't know if university's for you.
Yeah, wow. It must be better now, though. We just had 2 students for 2 weeks. So, like, they got to understand, and watch and be a part of the clinic for 2 weeks while being at school. I thought that was unreal.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Like,
that's
they got a real
good
understanding.
That.
Yeah,
I probably
we convinced them to be physios. Yeah.
Because
well,
no, I had the exposure. Like, we didn't have any exposure to that sort of stuff. And so, when I was asked, like, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, we learn in a bubble. Like, we don't get workplace. Well, back when I was studying, like, we didn't get work placements. We didn't get careers days, or we didn't hear from a range of different people. We didn't really get all these stories shared with us. So, and like, it wasn't like that social media was.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah.
You know, like, we didn't.
Right.
You couldn't see what some of the insides of these careers look like. And so I was like, I don't know what to do. And she was like, oh, have you considered TAFE and do event management? You'd be a great... And I was like, I couldn't imagine anything more stressful. For my 21st, I got an event planner for my 21st because I was like, I just want to... I was like, I just want to party with 20 people on a rooftop somewhere. I was like, I just can't organize it because I was in the middle of exams because my birthday falls in the exam period.
Yeah,
and I hate event planning.
So you blame mum and dad now.
Yeah, I know, right? But I've always not liked that. I'm not very organized that way.
Well, you got
scatterbrained.
You got in and...
Yeah, so I got into uni, not really knowing. So I did the broadest degree I could do, which is science and arts.
Right.
And then I still didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished. So I just got the first job that was offered to me, which was tech consulting. And so it was this tech consulting firm. So it was in finance. So I worked in finance for a few years. And I mean, like, there were some parts that I enjoyed, but it just wasn't for me. But my science degree, I majored in psychology, and I loved the brain. I loved neuroscience. And so while I was working, in my 3rd year of working, I switched to part-time and then did a master's full-time in brain and mind science. And so that's when I started going to physio because I decided, like, I was going to take on more than I could do, but I loved that master's, and I was like, I have to go clinical. This is so interesting. I love the brain. I love rehabilitation. I love stroke recovery. All that stuff was so fascinating. And it was so intellectually challenging.
Which drove you? I feel like that's your driver.
The intellectual challenge. Yeah, I loved the intellectual challenge. And there was such a... like, the interaction between the doctor and the patient and that leadership and that kind of, you can personalize a path for them. I loved that. And so I felt like I wasn't getting that in where I was. And I loved the subject matter more in what I was studying. So I thought, but I didn't want to do research or anything. So I thought, you know what, I'd regret not applying for it and just seeing if medicine would be something I could do. And so I always thought I didn't have the brains for it. And then I did so well in my master's. I was like, oh, maybe I do have the brains for it. And then so I applied and I got in. And I was like, oh, but I still hate needles. To this day, I still hate needles.
I was a bit late.
I was like, I still felt like I didn't have the stomach for it. But I feel like med school has like really helped me get over that. I think a lot of students go into it with hesitation about, oh, can I really handle this?
What about dry needling? You've never really...
I don't like dry needling. I hate dry needling.
But like, I don't think a lot of people, when they go into medicine, would sit there and say, oh, I'm happy to, with needles and I'm happy to look at gory shit.
What kind of person is that?
Yeah, like, it's usually they're going into it because it's an idea of what it's an idea of what they want to do, right?
Yeah, because I was motivated by the patient relationship.
Oh, yeah.
And the brain challenge. Like, I wanted to do something that was both relationship driven as well as intellectually stimulating, and that's not the case where I was working before, but it was where I was working. I'm very grateful for that because it taught me a lot of people skills and life skills, and I was doing that while applying for med school because it takes a while to get in.
Do you think though that, and I don't want to be controversial when I say that, but that's probably the key to have a good relationship with clients, right, and patients, is that you
understand customer service.
And like doctors aren't known for that.
Well, I think we've got different. I don't know. This is a tough one. I have to be very careful.
I'll say it for you. Because it happens in physio, right? There's a certain level of intellect that you need to have to be a doctor. Like you said, you didn't know whether you had the brains for it, and you would want to know that your doctor, in whatever field that they are in, from GP to whatever it is, they know their shit, stuff, right?
Yeah.
But to know your shit, you need to be able to sit there and study and remember and all those kind of things. And traditionally, there isn't necessarily... it comes with a certain personality that then doesn't lend to personal skills and communication.
Plus, you give away your social life to study.
Well, see, that
probably plays a role as well.
That's hard because...
I'm not saying all doctors like that, but it's definitely... And now we're seeing it in physio as well.
You need a lot of personal management. Like, you need to be able to sustain your own life and stay healthy. And that's really hard to do. You need to take care of your own brain. You need to take care of your friends and family. Like, you need to have them in your life, and they're going to go through things as well. And they're going to need you. And you can't be like, sorry, this relationship is one-sided throughout med school. You can't do that. So it's like you're going to have so many different avenues all around you that you're going to have to engage with. Like, you're going to have to be the friend and be the daughter or be the sister and be the responsible adult, and you're going to have to be all these things at once for quite a few years of your life doing this. And unless you have the resilience and ability to manage that, like, there are going to be times where it's not managed. Like, I can attest to that. There are times where I've not managed any of it. But you have to recover. You've got to be the personality that can recover from that. Otherwise, it's going to be so hard. It's so hard.
That's why I really commend everything that you've been through and doctors, because just that road and that pathway and all the hurdles and everything to get to the end point, that must be extremely challenging.
It's enjoyable at the same time. Like, it's not just it's not torture, but it's like, I'm so grateful that I didn't come to I didn't get the passion for medicine until I was a bit older. Because I don't think, like, genuinely knowing myself, I don't think I could have gone through this degree as comfortably as I did if I was like 23. I just didn't have the personality for it. I didn't have the temperament. I didn't have the focus. I didn't have the maturity. No way. No way. I wanted to gallivant around Europe when I was 23. I didn't want to. I didn't want to sit in a classroom or a tutorial room or be on day in, day out on placement. I didn't want to do any of that. But as I got older and I started to develop these skills and develop the passion, then I was like, okay, be real. What do you want out of life? What's going to give you a fulfilling career? And then to actually plan, where do I want to be and how am I going to get there in a very strategic way? Not kind of going, okay, this is where I want to be, fantasy land. Let's get there by not earning it, because that's really easy to kind of delude yourself into getting to an end point where you feel like you're dishing out all this advice but you've got no authority to, or you're getting to a place that's sort of like my point is, like, you don't want to have a goal of where you want to be, what you want to be doing, and then try and take like option C because you don't think you can do option A. And I think that we sell ourselves short very often. Go, oh, I'm not going to get in. Like, I was like, oh, is it worth it? Like, I'm probably not going to get in. I don't have the brains for it. So that's actually why I did the master's first, because I was like, medicine's not for me. I don't have the passion or I don't have the brains for it. I'm not going to get in straight away. And so I did my master's first. And sometimes it takes time to go, okay, I can do it. I prove myself. I do have the academic rigor, or I do have the passion. Sometimes it takes time to get to your end goal, and it's not it's not like a shortcut. Like it took a lot of time. People, like it's easy now finishing going, oh yeah, like that went quick. Like it didn't. Like it really didn't. It really wasn't quick. So yeah, it's hard to explain that journey sometimes because it feels like it was such a huge chunk of my life.
But it is for a lot of doctors, right? Like, and especially
but there are
depending on
different paths to medicine. Like
but
some people go straight from high school, they know exactly what they want to do. They're super driven. Like I respect that because like that was just.
But even now, like if you want to specialize in something, like that's more study. Like if you choose to go down a particular path now, you know, that's more residency. That's more, you know, stuff that you need to do. Like it's a long journey. Yeah. Like it's not like you just go to uni for what is it, 6 years? 7 years?
It's 4 years post-grad.
Yeah.
It's 5 to 6 undergrad.
Yeah. So you know, if you at the longest journey is obviously that 6 years then, right?
Yeah.
You're not sitting there going, oh, okay, now I'm done. Like with a lot of other, like physio, you're done after 4 years, right?
No,
now,
that's the start.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
start. That's why, like, it was so important for me knowing if I'm going to go down this path, it has to be what I want to do. Like, because it's not worth it otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it took me a bit longer to get there, to learn that this is actually what I wanted to do. And I don't regret taking the long road to it because it was I felt like I really did get there. I don't know how to say this. Like, had I gotten there sooner, like when I first started thinking about it, if I got in straight away, I don't think
you wouldn't have appreciated it.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have appreciated it, and I don't think I would have coped as well.
Yeah, and I think like from our discussions, I think that you're going to be like a great doctor, and we need more people like you. And just touching on that, do you want to tell the listeners a little bit more about like your purpose and your sort of mission going into, you know, the medical world and the workforce? You know, spoke about in terms of like where that actually looks. You know, we're talking about general practice maybe, or like
practice and stuff.
or like hospital setting. You're talking about going into being a GP, right?
I would.
Maybe I know. I just put that in your mouth there. Sorry.
When I first started, like this is going back to when I first got into med school, it was off the back of being so inspired by my masters and seeing particularly neurology. And so I always wanted to work in the neurology space, but it was more around dementia, working with dementia, or patients with dementia and stroke recovery and stuff. Like those areas of medicine just interest me so much. So that was what got me like interested. But then as I continued to study, I got more and more interested in so many other areas of medicine. Like I loved women's health. I loved parts of pediatrics. I loved metabolic disorders and things like diabetes and diabetes care. And those areas of medicine are just so interesting. And I feel like there are so many people in society, particularly in certain communities, that are just not getting the level of care because there are just so many patients. And so I thought that sort of, and I still get to see a lot of the presentations and care of people with dementia. So that's what interested me in general practice, because you get to see a bit of everything. But then as I started my placement, I loved my GP placement.
Which is great to hear because like we've spoken about previously at the start of this, and we were talking about articles and we're sending each other content and stuff like that could come across a little bit controversial. We're talking about things that trying to get out more information about what we're putting in our mouth and all that sort of thing.
It's all first line community health. Where these conversations happen. Like the allied health community and the GP community are sometimes the first point where people hear about, oh, they should be doing this differently, or there's actually a different way to eat this, or there's a different way to cook that, or a different way to move this that doesn't cause harm. And sometimes we're so used to doing something that it takes that first point to correct it, or to go, oh, here's a different way that's healthier. And And it's just like, it's exactly what primary care is. You've got like such a beautiful and unique opportunity to get in there early and change people's behaviors and understanding about what it means to be healthy. And you can do so much preventative health in the community, so they're not going into hospitals. If you do community health right, and also maintenance and care of chronic health, that's best done in the community.
Yeah.
So you're not getting these. I mean, you're always going to have acute presentations going into a hospital, but if certain conditions are really well maintained in the community, perhaps the chance of acute presentations goes, like the frequency of acute presentations goes down because the condition's so well controlled. And there are services and teams and clinics and everything that are doing it well. And so that to me is such an exciting area. I really want it to work in that space, but we'll see what pathway leads me there. I'm still not. It's so early. It's so early. Like, I don't want to commit myself to something so early, because there are people that do, and it's like, and I respect it because you clearly know exactly what you want to do.
Yeah.
But as soon as you do that, then it's like you're putting blinkers on to anything else that might call you. And I know firsthand that if I do that, then like if I did that, I wouldn't be here where I am.
Yeah.
Like if I kind of closed my walls and said, "Nah, this is for me."
Yeah.
But that's why I sort of have. I'm still
horizon.
open.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's what we need.
All right, guys, we couldn't shut her up the whole time she was on today. So the good thing is there is really cool info that we've been going through, and we've had to split this up into 2 episodes. So I want you guys to stick around for part 2, which is coming out next time, as we just go into more detail on our, obviously our health system in Australia, the things that are affecting our health, where we could probably improve our health and metabolic health, and what's contributing to that. And yeah, there's so much information that we want to continue to go through with you guys.